It's interesting where we're at now in the Echoes of Wisdom life cycle narrative, because when this game first came out, there was a bunch of people crying, like trying to fabricate some kind of narrative. It looks too easy, it looks casual, it looks kiddie. You have the we don't want to play as Zelda. Like it looks like Tears of the Kingdom, but top down. There's no originality anymore. Like there was so much like insistence right from the get go that this game was going to be bad. Okay? And this is coming so soon after the heels of Tears of the Kingdom that I called this immediately. That this was going to fall flat on its face, right? The narrative against Echoes of Wisdom was never going to survive the game's actual release. And here we are, a couple of months later, we've seen a lot of the game now. We know a little bit about the setup and the world and like the mechanics. And this has gone from a release that people were downplaying to something that people seem to genuinely think can be Game of the Year. And it's not just because the game is so good, right? The reality is that there just isn't anything coming out that can compete with this, right? It's been a bad year for games in general. There's no getting around it, but that gives room for something like Echoes of Wisdom to succeed. And considering how vehemently people fought against Tears of the Kingdom, how obsessive they were at downplaying everything that game did, right? All of the hate, all of the rage, all of the narratives they manufactured for that game, none of that applies to Echoes of Wisdom, right? Because this game does feature a new playable character. It does have a new story. It does have a new setting. It does have new mechanics. It's like a completely new original game, right? All the narratives that the Pretendos threw against Tears of the Kingdom have completely fallen on their flat on their face, right? And so it's been very difficult for the community to pivot and try to hype up something else, right? That's the reality of it. And I do think this is going to be like a trend going forward. This is my prediction when Tears of the Kingdom first came out, is that Nintendo is going to keep innovating with all of these new Zelda releases. They're going to keep introducing new mechanics. They're going to keep introducing new characters, new settings, keep like wildly reinventing like the Zelda formula with every new release, while the highly critically lauded warship titles, games like Starfield, like Baldur's Gate 3, like Elden Ring, right? Like when these Space Marine 2, right? When these games come out and people try to do that thing where they're like, oh, this is the greatest game ever made, it has such a good story, yada yada. Like, the best those games can possibly do is just be a rehash of a game like made 25 years ago, right? That is the current state of the gaming industry now, is that the best we can hope for is something that resembles a game made 25 years ago. As opposed to like the average Nintendo game that constantly innovates, constantly keeps doing new things, constantly grows, evolves, like introduces new concepts, while keeping the old stuff like very much readily available, right? The difference in quality between Nintendo and the rest of the industry is palpable. Even if the industry comes out and tries to damage control it, like they did with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, like they did with Tears of the Kingdom, like they did with Fire Emblem Engage, right? 3 of the absolute best titles released in 2023 downplayed in order to push a narrative that this Dungeons and Dragons knockoff was one of the best RPGs ever put out, right? Again, that was never going to survive, like, long term. Like, already, like, the year of, they did that. I was seeing Baldur's Gate 3 get taken out by The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time in greatest game of all time polls. And over the next several years, much like Undertale, Baldur's Gate 3 isn't even going to get past, like, the entry level, right? There is absolutely no way that the gaming community will be able to write off Echoes of Wisdom the way they did with Tears of the Kingdom, right? And what's more, Tears of the Kingdom has been out long enough now that people are beginning to realize that the commonly held complaints against it, the narrative against it, doesn't make any sense, that it's just people looking for reasons to complain, and that it doesn't really have any real basis in reality at all. Tears of the Kingdom is an absolute masterpiece of storytelling, of game design, of world design, just an amazing game in general. And yet people tried vehemently to try to write it off as a disappointment day one. And that narrative just hasn't stuck, right? We are beginning to see it crumble into 2024 because people are still playing the game. They're finding new things about it. They're utilizing the mechanics in new interesting ways. People are taking the time to finish the game, right? Like, again, I pointed this out when it came to, like, Emiya the Smiling Man. I was seeing people try to call the story disappointing before the game was even out, right? People were trying to say Emiya the Smiling Man had a bad story before anybody even knew what it was. And I do think this really needs to be understood when it comes to this this discussion of Nintendo contrarianism, right? Is that the vast majority of the people who are doing this aren't playing the games. And those who are, the YouTubers and the streamers, are deliberately trying to fabricate a narrative to keep people more interested in other games that are more lucrative for them to stream, right? That's what it comes down to, right? When it comes to, like, the actual superior video game, when you actually look at what Elden Ring does, like, there is no denying that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, that Super Mario Bros. Wonder, that Fire Emblem Engage was far superior than anything that FromSoft has ever put out, right? There will be a point where it is going to be very, very difficult to downplay that reality, right? It's interesting looking back and seeing, like, just how much The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess was hated when it first came out. How much everybody thought that game was, like, a huge letdown and how it didn't live up to expectations. And there are reasons for that, right? Like, we should have discussions about what a game does well and what it doesn't do well, right? But looking at it, like, 20 years later, there is no denying that Twilight Princess was hugely successful, hugely popular, hugely influential, and one of the absolute best games to come out in that period, right? Again, people really somehow thought that giving Baldur's Gate 3 a Game of the Year award would somehow elevate it beyond what Nintendo was doing. But all that's doing is discrediting the Game Awards as a concept, right? Nobody bought Alan Wake 2, even though it was the runner-up of that night. Nobody cared about all the other games that won a bunch of awards, right? Nobody cared about what was coming. Like, again, the Game Awards are a complete joke, and we need to disavow them at every opportunity. The real games are good no matter how much they sell, how high the Metacritic scores are, and how many Game Awards they receive, right? There is no stopping Zelda, there is no stopping Metroid, there is no stopping Mario, no stopping Pokemon, no stopping, like, Mario and Luigi, no stopping anything that's coming out in the near future. Nintendo is dominant.